On this special episode of Supercars Talk, for a change, I discuss Formula One. There was some big news from the Formula One paddock this week. How does this relate to the whole Supercars Talk thing? Well, it doesn't really. But Dan Ricciardo, our Australian favourite driver, has played a big part in this. So that's why I want to cover it off, because there's a lot of stupid comments on the internet about this whole thing. And I basically just want to put in my 2 cents and clear up a few things. So all the moves last week started when it was announced that Vettel is going to be leaving Ferrari at the end of 2020. Whether the season actually finishes in 2020 or 2021, this season will be his last with the Scuderia. Differences of opinion, is what they're citing. I assume it's because Ferrari wanted Charles Leclerc as the number one and Sebastian Vettel wanted to be the number one at Ferrari. Pretty simple. So this opened up a seat at Scuderia Ferrari. Now the problem here, a lot of people saying, Dan for the seat. The problem is they wanted a number 2 for Charles Leclerc, and as proven by Dan leaving Red Bull because he was going to have to play number 2 to Max Verstappen, he wasn't going to go to Ferrari to play number 2 to Charles Leclerc. So that opens up the seat for Carlos Sainz. I think he's probably happy to be going to... He's now got a seat at Ferrari, essentially been snubbed by the Red Bull program. Went to Renault, got snubbed for Dan Ricciardo, funnily enough. And now he's ended up at Ferrari, probably on quite a good pay packet, and gets to be number 2 to one of the best drivers in the world. It's probably not a bad position for him to be in, considering he probably wasn't going to win a championship elsewhere. So now Dan has left Renault. Well, he will be leaving Renault and going to McLaren, taking Carlos Sainz's seat. Now, a lot of people are saying this is the move Dan should have made a year ago when he went to Renault. If we wind back the clock a little bit at the time, he had McLaren and Renault offering him a position. Now, Renault was on the up and up. They were offering Dan a lot of money, and there were all these promises that were made to him at the time. And also you have to remember that at that time, McLaren were using Renault engines, like they were purchasing Renault engines as a Renault customer. So you could always see, in general, other than the Brawn years or some of the Red Bull years there where they were a Renault customer, the factory team is always going to do better than a customer team. So if the factory team's offering you more money, they're on the up. McLaren had been lost for many a year at that point, so I can see why he went to Renault at that point. What's changed at McLaren though to make the move now, and why this makes a lot more sense? They are getting Mercedes engines next year, which, Mercedes essentially has been a ticket to go and win things, since this turbo hybrid era started. Mercedes just goes and wins everything. There is a potential, the rumour that keeps popping up, that Mercedes is going to pull out as well, which would leave McLaren in a good position to become the factory Mercedes team. That's Mercedes pulling out as a constructor and just continuing as an engine manufacturer. So then the logical would be that McLaren becomes a full constructor again. But McLaren have also signed Andreas Seidel, who used to run, I think it was the Porsche LMP1 program. Very good team manager by the looks of things. They've also signed, his name escapes me at the moment, but he was the designer that worked at Toro Rosso, that probably was being groomed to move up from Toro Rosso to Red Bull at some point to replace Adrian Newey, who is generally regarded as a design genius. So they have a really good team manager, they have a really good designer, whereas over at Renault you have Cyril Abiteboul, who in my opinion is fairly useless, and then below that, they didn't make any big signings that were probably promised to Dan at the time, that they were going to get a star designer and things like that. So McLaren have now got really good team principle in place. They've got, a star designer and things like that. They're actually moving up. They've got the #1 engine, so it is a great move for Dan. I can fully see why he went to Renault at the time. There was good reason to go that way instead of McLaren. Maybe in hindsight now you might go, well, maybe he should have signed a 2-year deal and stayed with Red Bull because the Honda thing wasn't that bad, or maybe he should have gone straight to McLaren. If everything was put in front of me at the time, I probably would have made the same. I can see why he went to Renault over the others. As I said, in hindsight now, yeah, you would have stayed at Red Bull and been in a position to either take that Ferrari seat or something at that point, or, gone straight to McLaren and, hunkered yourself down there. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. If you had that, you would have picked the lotto numbers for this weekend, and you'd be sitting on a beach somewhere just kicking back, enjoying yourself. Well, once all these COVID restrictions are, reduced. So that's my take on the whole F1 kind of driver movements. It's great to actually see some movements, and I think there's probably a couple more twists and turns. Let's hope that the Supercars this year has some twists and turns in the driver market too. Will Davison's available now, and James Courtney still hasn't got anything announced, so we could at least see some moving around. Scott McLaughlin probably going to IndyCar too, so there is some shuffling to happen in Supercars. It's exciting talking about all these moves. If you've got any thoughts on all of this, supercarstalk@gmail.com, or leave me a comment down in the comments section. Until next time, I'll see you later.
The lies we tell are found on film, and you start to push your lips to mine outside my room.